Handling legal matters is stressful. So, let the law offices of Frank Bruno Jr. provide you with the insightful counsel you deserve. The law offices of Frank Bruno Jr. has successfully handled thousands of cases for 25 plus years. They focus on elder law and estate planning, but are equipped to navigate you through all stages of family law and divorce to real estate law and probate. The law offices of Frank Bruno. Call 718-418-5000 or visit them at frankbrunolaw.com. That's frankbrunolaw.com. Frank Bruno. He's your numero uno.
Check this out.
No one knows New York better. The founder of the Guardian Angels, Curtis Sliwa.
You can't compete against that.
On 77 WABC. Now to the Bernard McGurk studios of 77 WABC and Curtis Sliwa.
Paul, the child of God, he was walking along the road, and I asked him, tell me, where are you going? Yes, he told me. Said, I'm going down to Leicester's farm, gonna join in a rock and rollin'. Got to get back to the land, said my soul. We are stars, we are golden, we are pure, and we've got to get ourselves back to the garden. Well, then can I walk beside you? I have come to lose my smile, and I feel myself something turning, and maybe it's the time of year. Yes, maybe it's the time of man, and I don't know who I am, but life is for learning. We are stars, we are golden, we are pure, and we got to get ourselves back to the garden.
History was made. 55 years ago this past week, it was August 18th of 1969. 500,000 strong went up New York State Thruway to Bethel, New York, Max Yeager's farm. And so began the 72 straight hours of Woodstock. 3 straight days of a festival that lives on in memories for so many people of my generation, baby boomers, who actually attended. In fact, it was interesting recently speaking with Sid Rosenberg and hearing his cousin, Norm Coleman, who eventually became the U.S. Senator in Minnesota when he moved to St. Paul, became the mayor there. But he was a hippie. He was up in Woodstock. So many people were hippie dippies back then and up in Woodstock. And it conjures up fond memories. So it was of great interest that earlier today, me, who went through that area, although I didn't go up to Woodstock, I certainly felt the effects of it. And Nancy, who wasn't even birthed yet, descended upon a bucolic, iconic location where Little Italy meets the Bowery, meets Greenwich Village. And when you walked into this, magnificent park, it's a vest pocket park in the middle of a block of tenements. And you see statues and you see gardens. And there were people there. They were having a little concerto. And you could see there were people of my generation, baby boomers, probably some of whom were up in Woodstock. A lot of hipsters and millennials. A lot of Generation Zs. Park was packed. Just good vibrations. And the mayor of the city of New York in 3 weeks has intentions to dig up that park and put up high-rise housing, what he claims is affordable housing for seniors. And Nancy, I believe that was your first opportunity going to the Elizabeth Street Park in Lower Manhattan. What was your observation upon first walking in there today?
Well, I mean, to your point, it was probably one of the most magnificent community gardens I'd seen before. It has a lot of different seating areas. I think it's 1 square mile total. It has, different things that are growing that have scents to them. So, like, I could smell lavender, and every spot there is intimate in its own way. Like, you can sit in one little area and not really observe everything in the rest of the area. It's, like, very secluded in that way. So it's nice. And right off down the street, it's a, bustling city where you have, like, a lot of really nice eateries, and there's just a ton of people enjoying themselves. So, I mean, I think it's the quintessential concept of what a community garden's supposed to be, right in the middle of everything, and yet this quiet solitude and sanctuary with all of that nature.
I would call it a very bohemian area. Very bohemian.
Definitely.
I mean, it's a real slice of old New York with the hipsters and millennials that populate that area, not far from the old St. Patrick's Cathedral on Mulberry Street, where it's still got the catacombs. This is before they built the edifice up on Fifth Avenue. I mean, there's so much history in that area. And as I stood there, and by the way, ladies and gentlemen, you can go to my Facebook, you can go to my Instagram, you can go to my Twitter account. And Nancy, as Matt Blaze has seen steals a day, I couldn't even get in a word edgewise on the post. Nobody down there wanted to hear from me because, naturally, you fit in. You were like part of the fabric of that community. Meantime, they're looking at me. Gee, I wonder if he's voting for Trump. Gee, how do we go up to him and ask him to leave the park?
No, they were nicer than that.
Oh, they were nice, but I could feel the vibes like he's not one of us,
Well, I mean, it's true. You kind of weren't one of them, but, you still fit in.
I knew that park. In fact, I had actually gone down to that park for my very first time. I think it was in 68 or 69, right before Woodstock. I mean, particularly when it's hot and sweltering out.
Like today.
I remember going down to these parks when there was no air conditioning. Most people didn't have air conditioning. And I've told the story many times. My grandfather, Fidel Bianchino, in that tenement on Albany Avenue in East New York, he would take his socks off. It was so hot. If you had a fan on, if you could afford a fan, it actually blew the hot air around, so it really wasn't worth it. The walls would sweat. It was hotter inside your tenement apartment than it was outside. Or even if you decided to stay on the roof and sleep on the roof, they called that Tar Beach. You could safely sleep on the roof years ago. Now, you're taking your life in your hands. But I remember him taking his socks off, putting his feet in the turlet and flushing over and over. And it was a poor man's jacuzzi. And we'd go over to Highland Park, which was magnificent, over by Jamaica Avenue. And it always seemed to be about 10 degrees cooler in the park than it ever was out in the hot, sweltering asphalt, particularly with the sun beaming down on the concrete, steel, glass-encased canyons of office buildings and tenements. I mean, this is a slice of New York. The mayor's lost his mind.
Yeah, and the really sad part about this is you have complete community support of keeping this garden as it is, because it is such, part of the fabric of the neighborhood, and it's so beautiful. Like, why would you possibly tear down something that already exists to make some cookie cutter building? And the only amount of houses the units it's going to have is 123. So you have thousands and thousands of people who live there who are saying, we don't want this, and you're willing to override that for 123 people who aren't even there yet. I mean, that doesn't really sound like the people who are elected to represent office are doing the right thing, and Mayor Adams is standing very strong on this. We have to use this spot. It has to be this spot. It's only 123 spots overall. Like, why would you tear down something that already exists? You can easily have it in a pre-existing building, retrofit a building. Another thing is that Adams just issued an executive order, and that was directing all of the city agencies that they have to look at the properties that are under their control, what they have, and see what can be used for affordable housing. So if you have your own city-owned property that already exists, why in the world would you be saying to a garden, we need yours too?
But it's not just any garden. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've never been there, Google it up. Look at it. It's like a scene out of Greek mythology, the ancient Roman times. It's got these magnificent statues. It's just the way the garden is created. You walk through this sort of like maze of magnificence. And everyone is sitting and they're relaxed and they're enjoying themselves, whether it's in wintertime, spring, fall, or a hot sweltering day in the summer. And boy, this mayor is making no friends. I mean, that area is very democratic, very liberal, very progressive. As I said, it goes from the survivors of the era of Woodstock, baby boomers like myself, a lot of hipsters and millennials down there, a lot of generational Zers, and they just cannot for the life of them understand and know this, the history of this so-called affordable housing. I'm, as you know, Nancy, battling away up in Riverdale to help the people on 238th Street. Right in the shadow of Manhattan College, which has now been renamed a university. Oh, yeah. But that's a magnificent area, too. And Manhattan College, years ago, sold a empty dorm. They sold it to a nonprofit group that had meetings with the community. And, you know, that's a very democratic, liberal, progressive area up there also. And this nonprofit said at a coffee clutch, we're going to be providing affordable housing for senior citizens and veterans. And the community gave them a standing ovation. Oh, that's a great use of that empty dorm. And then within 6 months, like they do all over the city, they flip the script. Department of Homeless Services calls them up and says, some will double your dollars if you house migrants. They do that all over the city. And so these folks down there on, it's where Spring Street, right near Mott, near Mulberry, near the Bowery, Elizabeth Street. Oh, I mean, you can almost, it transports you back. You feel like you're 100 years before. You can actually feel the vibe of what it must have been like 100 years before. It hasn't changed that much. And he wants to completely destroy this in order to build housing that'll never be affordable by the time it's up. And you will have lost a great green spot. And, it ain't going to stop with this part. It's going to be every Vest Pocket Park and then maybe parts of other huge parks. What the hell is wrong with taking all these empty office buildings, they're empty, and converting them for residential use? Look at only half the office space is being used now.
I mean, ultimately, the population of New York City hasn't changed much, so there really isn't this need. It's this fake need for living spaces that doesn't really exist, and the concept of saying affordable, this is consistent bait and switch. There's no repercussion for when these developments finally come into existence, when they don't actually provide the affordable housing. It's like, okay, man, it's no big deal. So that never happens.
They loved having Nancy Sliwa there. They were a bit perturbed that I was there with my red beret and red sateen jacket. But what they loved, and this is what made headlines all over the world, that there was a letter authored by Martin Scorsese, who grew up in that area, went to NYU, which is right there, and he typed it out on a typewriter. Mm-hmm. This is how he sends his letters. He's old school. And he was joined by Robert De Niro and Patti Smith. And they said 1,000 times no to Eric Adams. Do not dig up this park. Do not put up what you're claiming is affordable housing for senior citizens. There's so many other locations that you can use. And I got to tell you, this mayor is stubborn. He's obstinate. And I'm going to be straight up with you. It's a predominantly white area. So it's almost like he is not going to back down. It's sort of like, why? Because it's a predominantly white area. This guy always looks at things through the prism of color. It's always through the prism of color. Not that this is a great park for everybody. In fact, I saw an elderly black woman there. She was all masked up. You can tell she's probably still, hesitant because of the lockdown and pandemic. She was a much older black woman. She was so enjoying that little concerto. Everybody was there. There was a mixed crowd. What is wrong with this guy?
And then you have like the city's housing commissioner talking about the letters. It really doesn't matter who sends the letter. We're still going to do what we're going to do. I mean, how do you justify that?
Well, this is my suggestion to everybody down there. Patrons of the arts, those who go to NYU, those who live in the shadow of that university. Yeah, and that's the other thing I can't figure out. Out of all the schools that Donald Trump and Melania could send Barron to, you know what school he's enrolling in?
No idea.
NYU.
Oh, why?
I mean, he's going to be a target there.
Yeah, have they been to the neighborhood?
I don't think so.
It's not good.
I do not. I mean, look, if your name is Trump, you do not want to be going to NYU. Absolutely not. You're going to need half the Secret Service just to guard Barron just going to and from his dorm. Oh, just when you think things might be normalizing a bit. Ladies and gentlemen, please Google that park if you've never been to that park. And it's one of the most magnificent parks I've ever been in. Small park. It's not comparable to our Central Park or Prospect Park or Van Cortlandt Park or even Branch Brook Park in Newark, which is amazing. Or the best park I've ever been in, Stanley Park in Vancouver, British Columbia. People have actually said they've had life-changing experiences in Stanley Park in Vancouver, British Columbia.
I guess it depends what you were doing in the park.
And I totally understood. In fact, Sun Young Moon, who found the Moonies, he claimed that he was inspired by God when he came from South Korea, and his first location was Vancouver, and he walked through Stanley Park, and God reached down to him and said, "You are going to start the Unification Church and steal all that money for yourself." I'll never forget, he was living in Tarrytown in Westchester. He was on trial for tax evasion, and he was being questioned by the federal prosecutors. And they said, "Where's the money for your church?" And Sun Young Moon looked at the prosecutor and said, "I am the church."
That's a great answer.
Is that why you have all the money in your personal bank accounts? And he answered, again in broken English, "I am the church. I am Sun Young Moon."
Well, there you go.
Well, he was found guilty. He went to jail. Didn't matter. His Moonies were out there selling flowers in the Midian. Hey, you know where the New Yorker Hotel is? You and I, we went to the New York Hotel with John and Margot Katsimatidis and Chad Lopez and Chaz Palminteri and his friend who had been a prosecutor for years, first with Rudy Giuliani in the U.S. Attorney's Office, Southern District, and then originally Bronx DA's office. And that was right when John and Margot had signed the papers in which Cumulus was giving up their rights to WABC. Thank God we were on the chopping block and they had rescued us. And we went to that restaurant in the basement of the New Yorker Hotel. And the poor guy ended up with COVID within like a week and was dead. They took him to the ICU, to the emergency ward in Jacoby Hospital in the Bronx on Mashula Parkway. Next thing we found out, dead like so many other people at that time. But people don't realize that New Yorker Hotel, right on the northwest corner of 34th Street and 8th Avenue, they used to have nets all around. And it wasn't just scaffolding, like almost all the city has scaffolding. It was nets. Because the Moonies were housed there by Sun Young Moon. They owned the New Yorker Hotel at the time. And Moonies would be jumping out of the windows trying to commit suicide and jumping right into those nets. The nets were there to keep the Moonies from squashing people on the sidewalk below.
Interesting.
Well, they were brainwashed. It was a cult. Oh, man, let me tell you something. Boy, I just traveled on a time machine with so many of our listeners. I know, Nancy, you weren't birthed at that time. But when we come back, more issues involving parks, which is a sanctuary for so many people in so many places all over this country, all over the world. And my pursuit of Happy, that elephant in the Bronx Zoo who's not at all happy, who has now been missing for 6 weeks. 6 weeks. And they won't let us see not a picture, a video of Happy. They wouldn't even take the New York Post from Sunday's edition and put it next to Happy and take a picture so we'd all know that Happy is alive as if it was a hostage video.
I think we all know why.
I think so. As we continue with the extended Rip and Read featuring Nancy Sliwa, yours truly, Curtis Sliwa, and don't forget the Animal Welfare Hour coming from 10 to 11. Nancy rescued another cat earlier today at the Animal Rescue and Care Center, the new one, in Ridgewood, Queens, and we'll be telling you all about there, right here on your place to be, WABC.
WABC.
Check this out.
No one knows New York better. The founder of the Guardian Angels, Curtis Sliwa.
And you can't compete against that.
On 77 WABC. Now to the Bernard McGurk studios of 77 WABC and Curtis Sliwa.
If you're going to San Francisco, be sure to wear some flowers in your hair. If you're going to San Francisco,
Oh, what a beautiful city it used to be. Right in that whole era of Woodstock 55 years ago. I remember years later in forming the Guardian Angels there, the first time I walked into Golden Gate Park, right along the bay, East Bay area. You see everything was magnificent. You see the two bridges spanning the bay. And you say, man, it's the most gorgeous place in all of America. Golden Gate Park. That city has completely been destroyed. Completely. And Elon Musk has announced, hey, I'm taking Twitter. You know, that one square block that he had purchased the building in from the old regime. Said, I'm leaving San Francisco. I'm going to Texas. And you know what the leaders of the business community and the political establishment told him? Good, pack up, get the hell out of here. We don't need you. And they've said this to business after business. It's a ghost town. You go through the canyons of the Mission. Oh, it's magnificent. You go to downtown. Oh, magnificent. It is a ghost town. And it's only getting worse. Populated by homeless, emotionally disturbed. Gruesome Newsom, the pretty boy governor, cleaned it up for a few days when his pal, President Xi, came in from Red China. Oh boy, did they spick and span that place. And then the moment President Xi wheels up, leaving San Francisco International Airport for Beijing, back to... Can you imagine telling businesses... Yeah, pack your bags and leave. We don't want you here. We don't want your jobs. We don't want your tax dollars. We don't need you
Well,
here.
that's kind of what happens in New York City now, doesn't it?
Not to that extent.
A little bit, though.
I mean, I would say San Francisco the absolute worst when it comes to quality of life, trying to encourage business, working with business to try to stay, because they have so many other options. And yet, there was a time there, you'd go to Haight-Ashbury at the time of Woodstock. Peace, love, free love, happiness, people with flowers in their hair. Remember, it was the flower generation. It was the hippie generation. I mean, that was the epicenter of the movement, San Francisco. Now you go to Haight-Ashbury. Oh, my God, it's like zombies in Dawn of the Dead. The old Fillmore West, which used to have all the concerts like we had in the Lower East Side at the Fillmore East, gone. There's like nothing to attract you to San Francisco any longer other than Alcatraz and the homeless and the emotionally disturbed haven't taken the ferry out there to take over Alcatraz yet. What a sad set of circumstances. San Francisco had some really magnificent parks, all of them destroyed by homeless and emotionally disturbed with their encampments. So let's look back here to New York, because the biggest sporting event, I hated to admit it, it generated more money than any other event, more than the Yankees, Mets, or the Knicks, or the Nets, or any special sports activities in the city of New York. U.S. Open tennis tournament starts officially tomorrow, and the place, Flushing Meadow Park, will be packed with the trendoids, freakazoids, jet setters. Slice of quiche will cost you about $38. A little microscopic piece of quiche. You really got to be well-heeled to go. And I'll never forget the time that I was dragged out to the U.S. Open. I hate tennis, Nancy. I hate it with a passion. Can you imagine? You got two people at center court. You got Louis Armstrong Stadium, right? And then you got Arthur Ashe Stadium. And when they unveiled the statue of Arthur Ashe after years, curated me, he was all naked.
I remember that.
With a big schlong that was like artificially supposed to be his tennis racket.
Wait, it wasn't that, was it?
Yeah.
No.
And people were like, oh my God, what did you do to Arthur Ashe? And all the artsy-fartsy crowd was saying, oh, the racket was an extension of his phallic symbol. Freaks! So finally, black people took great umbrage to that and said, hey, we got Arthur Ashe here. We're trying to, idolize him by making him the main statue outside of Arthur Ashe Stadium. And rightfully so. Am I right or wrong? The statue
you are right.
is,
oh, my goodness.
He has his schlong in his hand as if it's the tennis racket.
Wow. That's,
What
wait.
These artists are freaks.
What is this?
I saw another statue of Arthur Ashe. It was in Richmond, Virginia, which was the Confederate capital at the end before the Confederacy, through Robert E. Lee, surrendered to General Grant, to end the Civil War. They had what they call the Canyon of Confederate Heroes when I first went there. Every top Confederate you'd ever know, right? From Robert E. Lee to Stonewall Jackson, generals I didn't even know, obviously Jeff Davis, who was the president, all of them. And at the end of it, to sort of like capitulate the black population in Richmond, which was the majority back then. We're talking about now the early 90s. At the end of this Confederate Hall of Fame, they called it, should have been a Hall of Shame. They put up a statue to Arthur Ashe, but it was a nice statue. It was like a normal kind of statue. Now I think that's the only statue down there. They took all the Confederate statues down. Am I right or wrong? This statue is an embarrassment.
I have no idea why he doesn't have clothes on, to be honest with you.
This is crazy.
Like, he didn't play naked, did he?
No.
Okay, so then I don't get it.
He was a great role model.
Yeah, that's kind of insulting.
He died of AIDS from a blood transfusion. I mean, the guy learned his craft. I hate tennis, but he didn't go he didn't go to a country club. He wasn't a top shelf 5-star tennis player. He played on public courts in Richmond, Virginia, because back then that's the only place they'd let black people play, were the public courts. So he had to rise up the ranks, a very difficult rise, and he became a great role model for tennis players, period. But especially aspiring black tennis players, of which there are many now. Not just from here, but from around the world. Nancy, they got a statue of him with no freaking clothes on. And look, and then to show you how special the U.S. Open is, and this David Dinkins, the only time he ever left Manhattan, he would go to Queens for every match, every day, and he'd go in his tennis whites as if he was going to be playing in center court. The guy was like obsessed with tennis. So he would go every day, each and every day, and then he ordered all the planes not to fly over the U.S. Open, at that time stadium, the Louis Armstrong Stadium, and now it's both stadiums. Louis Armstrong, basically the qualifying matches, and the Arthur Ashe Stadium, that's center court. That's where all the trendoids are. No planes can fly over. So all the planes are rerouted through Bayside, Whitestone, Little Neck, Douglaston, and people are screaming out there because they can't fly over there to land in LaGuardia. Shh, shh. Oh, it doesn't matter. The Mets are home, Citi Field, the planes fly over nonstop, but can't do it for the U.S. Open. So this guy, John McConnell, at the time was the vice president of what they call the spoken word for the ABC radio broadcasting network. Big macha. He loved tennis. He ordered me to go to the tennis stadium to accompany him. We get there. We're in the upper deck there, the nosebleed section. And they're honoring Billie King Moffitt, whatever the hell her name is. And naturally, they show her on the Jumbotron, and they give her all a standing ovation because she was a great tennis player. And her brother was a relief pitcher for the San Francisco Giants. So, I mean, great. Then they actually find me in the crowd because obviously I'm wearing my red beret, my red sateen jacket. And I'm on the Jumbotron, and I'm giving that Benito Mussolini look to everybody because I hate them. And everybody booed me. I mean, they booed me, and I just kept saying, more boos, more boos. So John McConnell tells me, get the hell out of here. Man, you have embarrassed us.
There you go. That's one way to get out of it.
I said, why? Because I wouldn't eat the quiche? And I've never been back there since. Meantime, Sid Rosenberg, he's so pining in the morning. Oh, I got to be with all the trendoids, the freakazoids, the jet setters there. Pay outrageous amounts of money, and God forbid you boo one of the tennis players. You're paying outrageous amounts of money, right? But you have to shh and actually applaud. Can't boo them. You get thrown out. Same thing in golf. God forbid you boo anybody in golf. You got to applaud. Baseball, football, boo. Basketball, boo. Man, I get all worked up about that. And the reason I brought up the U.S. Open, which I have to admit, I've seen the analytics. It actually brings more money into the city treasury than any other sports events combined. But I brought it up because there's always been a battle. Do you take Parkland from Flushing Meadow Park? And now they're going to put up a soccer stadium over there. All the park purists were saying, "What are you building?
What a mistake.
What are you building a soccer stadium over here in the park? We need Parkland."
Not a mistake.
And no, go! All these crazies, who spell football, fake, phony, fraudulent, fugazi football,
I'll tell
kickball.
You know what's not going to make a lot of money when they have the soccer, right, the World Cup?
Yes.
The way that has been structured, because I read all the stuff regarding it, we're going to lose money on that, no question.
And not only that, bribe. You have to bribe all those folks. One of the chairmen of the International Federation to determine, where World Cup gets played is a guy from Bulgaria. He told you can bribe me. I just need 10 pairs of new shoes. The guy from Bulgaria, the chairman of Bulgaria, said, I'm open for bribes. Just buy me 10 pairs of new shoes, and my vote is with you.
It's like, how they close down all the roadways when the UN's in town? So imagine that throughout like two separate boroughs. Like that's what they're doing. They're actually setting aside roadways so that these, the diplomats, as it were, from there can travel back and forth. That's going to be a mess and a half.
Well, look at it. I was communicating with Sid earlier today. Naturally, where was he? On the beach, adding to his tan. I said, did you see what they did to Rockaway? They have concerts now at like Beach 96th Street.
Oh, yeah, the amphitheater.
The amphitheater.
Yeah.
It's blasting everybody out of their homes.
Yeah, people were showing videos from their houses where it was literally shaking inside their houses.
Yeah, they do this in Forest Hills, too, at what used to be the tennis stadium. People all throughout the area, enough. I don't want to hear this rap crap. I keep my kids away from this, and every second word is F this, F this, F this, and it's amplified, and it goes all over Regal Park, all throughout the gardens, Forest Hills. It's like, what is wrong? Why do we force this on people?
I mean, why not just have it in an actual building so everyone doesn't have to hear it? I mean, it's like the same way when someone goes in like the subway. So there was someone today, they had their little speaker with them. Like everyone doesn't want to hear what you have to listen to, and now you're forcing it on an entire neighborhood.
My God.
Yeah.
And then, look, they took over Randall's Island. They gave it to the migrants. Now that's Rikers Island. So you can't even go there to play baseball or soccer or go riding on your bicycle or jogging. That's over. They've taken all the parks. Floyd Bennett Field on the weekends used to be packed. Packed. People would be flying kites, drones, bicycling, jogging. Great place. Now it's empty because they turned it over to the illegal aliens. I have no concept of what goes on the mind of this mayor when it comes to green space. I don't know. Maybe when he was a kid, he was deprived of going to parks or something. He's got like a phobia. He's like, he wants to take every square inch of parkland that is so valuable in our city, and everywhere that you can hear the 50,000 powerful watts of sound, we don't have enough. And he wants to put housing on it. All these parks that I've mentioned. He's going to try to force housing one way or the other. And I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, it's going to get so bad. They're going to be coming for your private homes. They have this plan, the city of yes. So if you're a owner, particularly in the outer boroughs, because it's not really relevant to Manhattan. Manhattan is all like this, blocks and blocks of tenements and apartment buildings and office buildings, with the gleaming steel, glass, and concrete. Doesn't really have that many private homes. But the outer boroughs, that's the American dream, to have your own home, your one family, your two family home. He wants the right to be able to seize those homes, give you market value, and put up apartment buildings. So Brooklyn can look like Manhattan, Queens can look like Manhattan, Staten Island can look like Manhattan, Bronx can look like Manhattan, and who benefits? The developers and the realtors. And who's getting wine, dined, and pocket lined to do all of this? Eric Adams and his cronies. I mean, we got to draw the line, ladies and gentlemen. Look, I'm more than happy to get arrested again to prevent the park on Elizabeth Street to be unearthed and then cleared out for supposedly affordable housing for senior citizens, which will never happen. It'll never happen. By the way, you were looking at this place in Crown Heights that they said was, remember, affordable housing. They had promised the community. They sat down with them. They had town hall meetings. They said, look, we're really trying our best to have affordable housing. And then they finally had it built, and they started to announce the actual rentals. I don't think there was anything affordable in that at all. Yeah,
and it actually was really crazy, too, because they came in under the guise of renovating this church, which is really like a very historic. It's like the oldest building in the neighborhood. And, and again, it actually had the only little green space as well, because it was in the center of basically like a block. And then the rest around it was green space, but it was open. So not only was it like one of the only places where you could see trees and grass, but it also had the ability to cool areas as well. So the developer came in and said, well, we're going to fix up the church because the church didn't have enough money. And then we're going to build some affordable housing. But the crazy design of this housing is it wrapped completely around the church and around the green space, so that now the only people who get the green space are the people who bought the green space. So they closed it off to everybody, and they just started marketing it. And like the lowest price one is like $3,200. There's no affordable housing.
Wait.
And it goes up to $7,000.
Wait a second. So a one-room apartment, a little hole in the wall.
Studio, not a one-room, no.
Right, studio, $3,200.
Yeah.
How the hell is that affordable?
Well, that's the problem.
That's Crown Heights.
Yeah, and look, see, that's what I'm saying. So there's no public green space, but you can purchase some green space if you have enough money.
That's affordable? $3,200 for a studio? Taking a wrecking ball to our city. The developers, man, greedy SOBs that they are. They've got their hooks into all the politicians. They wine them, dine them, pocket line them. How is that? I ask the question always. We had 8.1 million people in 1960. 8.1 million. Plenty of affordable housing. Plenty of housing. We now have 8.3 million people. So only, 0.2 million more? And we don't have any housing. Like maybe we should see how many apartments are being warehoused, taken off the marketplace because they can't get market rates for those apartments. Maybe if you would figure out a way to free up those apartments that are off the marketplace, you would have more than enough apartments. Remember, we had 8.1 million in 1960.
Yeah, and again, it's a pretty much it's just a lie to say that there's not enough housing. There is enough housing. It's just that it's so priced out of everyone's ability to pay for it. So saying we need more affordable housing, yeah, that's great. But by the time the developer builds it, they're under no obligation to limit it to what would be quote unquote affordable. So again, there's no protection. So you're not going to get it. That's the history of all the development in New York City.
Telling you, Nancy, it's time for you to do the deep dive. I've been given a series of figures about how many apartments are warehoused in the city of New York. It's eye-popping. So your rule of thumb for me is check, double check, triple check before you go out and spread some nonsense. So I'm going to leave it to you, Nancy. But the figures that I've heard of warehoused apartments, which owners of the property, owners of the apartment buildings, and the apartments have a right to keep off the marketplace if they don't think they can get the market rate. I understand that's capitalism, but there's got to be a way to free up those apartments instead of taking up every nook, cranny, and corner of park space and turning it into a development that we know is never going to be used for senior citizens or veterans. That's the intended purpose originally, and then they'll flip the script and it'll be a migrant shelter or a regular shelter. That's a guarantee. I've seen that bait and switch done over and over and over and over.
WABC.
Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Check this out.
No one knows New York better. The founder of the Guardian Angels, Curtis Sliwa.
And you can't compete against that.
On 77 WABC. Now to the Bernard McGurk studios of 77 WABC and Curtis Sliwa.
Wow. History was made earlier today down at Elizabeth Street Park, where the Bowery meets Little Italy meets Greenwich Village, where Bobby De Niro grew up, Martin Scorsese, Patti Smith. They have signed on to save the park, and believe it or not, I have joined them in solidarity with that today. Although people were very suspicious of my motives. But when they saw Nancy come forward, they said, give her the microphone. We don't want to hear from him. And Nancy stole the show. You got to go to our Facebook. You got to go to our Twitter. You got to go to our Instagram. All I'm doing is nodding my head. They wouldn't even let me speak. You stole the show, Nancy.
Well, thank you, Curtis, for saying so.
They love Nancy, and they were saying, did you have to bring him with you? But on that note, yesterday you were busy with the animals. You'll discuss that in the 10 o'clock hour, the animal welfare hour, as you visited the latest shelter that was built out in Ridgewood, Queens, and saved a cat from being executed, Luna. We'll get to that momentarily. But I was out on the corner of 51st Street and 7th Avenue yesterday. It was the annual Guardian Angel Festival every year, going back to 1988. The Hell's Kitchen community, Times Square community, has a festival in honor of the Guardian Angels because we saved that area. That area was 10 times worse than it is now. That was the age of crack, pimps, prostitutes, streetcar Monty, skeevy as it was Times Square and Hell's Kitchen, the Westies who dominated it, Irish organized crime there, and we cleaned it up. And so even those who haven't died or left to Florida remember that. So they have a festival in our honor each and every year. Thousands of people are passing by. They close down that part of 7th Avenue. It's quite the compliment to us. Well, boy, this year, with all the tourists walking up and down and coming up to me, many of whom recognize me either because they've seen me on television in their country over the years, or we have a Guardian Angel chapter in their country, and they're saying, Curtis, what happened to New York City? We're like afraid to walk out of our hotel. We hear all these horror stories of tourists basically getting knocked off. 3 Italians over the weekend. Sayonara, you know they're going back to Italy. They ain't coming back, and the stories they'll be telling to the news people there and spreading amongst their family and friends are going to put a big black eye on the Big Apple. What happened with the 3 Italians?
Okay, so this was around 9:30 on Saturday night, I believe, and it was 3 women. A 50-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a 35-year-old roughly, and an unhinged woman came up behind them. You know, they didn't have any idea that she was even approaching, and began to hit 1, 2, 3 in the head, and just kept on going. So two of the people actually got medical attention. One refused, but I mean, again, just this unhinged woman, without any notice. And again, look where it was. It was like right at that corner of 44th and 8th Avenue.
Oh, yeah.
Which is like the corridor of like lost dreams.
Well, remember recently on that same corner, there was a guy in a walker, an older black man in a walker. And he lived nearby in a shelter. And he would come out there every day outside of the, I guess you could call it a candy store, selling cigarettes and cheap booze and
a bodega, maybe?
Nah, it's not really. More of a smoke shop, but not selling weed. And he'd sit there every day. And so these women from Canada are walking by. He gets up out of his walker and he stabs one of the Canadian women. And then when he's caught, he's saying, I didn't like the way she was looking at me. Unhinged. We know what that means, emotionally disturbed. Remember recently on the subway station, the F train, Delancey, in the early morning hours, F train, which connects to the J train that takes you into Brooklyn over the Williamsburg Bridge, 2 Mexican tourist women are waiting there for the train. Again, another unhinged woman pushes them into the tracks, a.k.a. emotionally disturbed. It seems like every week there's a horror story of tourists who are coming here, and we need tourism, and they're getting attacked, they're getting robbed, they're getting beaten, they're getting roughed up. They're going to go home. There was that time in the old ESPN restaurant. They used to have 3 decks, ESPN. It was a great restaurant. For whatever reason, they decided they didn't want to be there anymore. It's now this enormous sports plaza. They sell all kinds of tchotchkes and gear and, paraphernalia from the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball. So a woman is there from Sao Paulo, Brazil. She's walking through the aisles. All of a sudden, these Venezuelan gangbangers come in that we put up in hotels right in the Times Square area, and they start shoplifting. And then the security officer stops them, and the guy pulls out a gun and starts firing it at the security officer, misses the security officer, shoots the Brazilian woman in the thigh, and then runs off and gets into a shootout with the NYPD.
That's incredible.
He gets away. He took the D train up to the Bronx, and they finally grabbed him in Yonkers. They had to grab him out of his house. He was living there with his mother. Illegals. And you scratch your head and you say, my God, these people are going to go back to their countries of origin. So you got the Brazilians, you got the Canadians, you got the Italians, you got the Mexicans, and they're going to be telling these horror stories. Don't go to New York City. Can you imagine? You're safer in Mexico City. You're safer in Milan. You're safer in all these cities than you are in New York City. And that's just going to have a major impact on future groups who may want to come here and spend the badly needed money that we need to fuel our economy. Tourism is like number one. And then the incredible thing is the Adams administration and Holcomb will tout tourism and saying, it's great All the hotels are filled.
Yeah.
Except they don't tell the other story.
Now it's paying customers.
Right. 1/5 of the hotels are occupied by illegal aliens that we pay for. 1/5. The unions are happy because they have no-show jobs because they don't do anything in the migrant hotels. The hotel suppliers, they own it. They get a lease for a whole year, whether migrants are in the rooms or not.
Yeah, and think about it. You don't even have to do any advertising. You have a preset contract, so there's no expectation.
And yet you put the migrants all in that Times Square corridor along 42nd Street, 8th Avenue, going up to 57th. They've destroyed it. They've destroyed it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we got to give you some bad news updates on the migrants who keep pouring in. There is one significant location that our own Dominic Carter, who will be in at 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock before the Mama Luke Frank Morano comes in. I'm a little worried about him, Matt Blaze. He's all depressed that his hero, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., dropped out. I mean, here was this Mama Luke. He was collecting signatures for him outside of the Stop and Shop there on 90th Street and 3rd Avenue in Bay Ridge, getting spat on by Trumpers, by folks at that time supporting Biden, run out of Bay Ridge, run out of everywhere, turned in his signatures, and his hero decided, no, I'm not running as an independent anymore. I'm up for the best deal. Harris, you got a deal for me? No? Okay, I'm with Trump.
New York's talk station with the king of New York. Curtis Sliwa, 77 WABC. Now to the Bernard McGurk studios of 77 WABC and Curtis Sliwa.
When you're a jet all the way from your first cigarette to your last dying day. When you're a jet, if the spit hits the fan, you got brothers around, you're a family man.
You're never alone.
You're never disconnected.
You're home with your own. When company's expected,
you're well protected. Then you are set with a capital J, which you'll never forget till they caught you away. When you're a jet, you stay up. So me, Tony, and me at the Dog Days dance at the gym tonight.
We can't rumble at the gym. It'd be lousy with cops.
Maybe we've had enough trouble with the Puerto Ricans for one day.
Relax, it's a social mixer, so we'll mix until the time's right to fix the rumble for tomorrow night. Be there 10 p.m., punctual like, dressed to kill, walking tall.
We always walk tall, we're jets!
The greatest. When you're a jet, you're the top cat in town.
you're the gold medal kid with the heavyweight crown.
When you're a jet,
You're the swingin'est thing, little boy, you're a man. Little man, you're a king.
the jets are in gear. Are still in
Hey, what happened to Officer Krumke?
Trucks will stay clear, 'cause every
Officer Krumke, grumpy as he was, kept them in line. And so this was the classic West Side Story. The score done by Leonard Bernstein, first a just very popular musical on Broadway, and then when it went to film, Academy Award winning, showed the street gangs of New York City in the 50s, the tension of more arriving Puerto Ricans in what they said was San Juan Hill at the time. This is before, through urban renewal, Robert Moses, the great builder, they took down San Juan Hill, all these teeming tenements, and they put up what you now know is Lincoln Center, with all the cultural buildings that provide great music and great culture. But before that, teeming tenements, mostly Puerto Ricans, Irish, Italians, and they were battling away. Jets versus Sharks put it all into perspective. And there were a series of gang battles in the 50s and 60s that were captured on film. In fact, I remember there was that famous one in Hell's Kitchen, which we eventually liberated. Oh, I remember it like it was yesterday, Puerto Ricans versus the Irish there.
Wait, but when you were involved in these things back in the day, people didn't just randomly break into song and dance, right?
Not quite, unless they were auditioning, for art and design, music and art schools, those kinds of things. But it was a period in which it had a lot of tension. Now, the Puerto Ricans were always perceived of as being foreigners, when in fact they were Americans by birth, whether on the island, the Commonwealth, or here in the mainland. Americans by birth. But if you were to talk to white ethnics back then, oh man, they're foreigners. They have that funny flag that they wave, the Puerto Rican flag. We were never taught in school that Puerto Ricans were citizens by birth. So there was a natural animosity, tension. East Harlem, the same thing. You had Puerto Ricans on one side, Italians on the other side, South Bronx. And it just went on and on and on. And so it became culturalized. It became part of documentaries. It became part of films. It became part of TV programs and movies. It captured an era. Ladies and gentlemen, what I have seen of late down near the old Brooklyn Navy Yard, in Clinton Hill on what they call Hall Street and Ryerson Street, right underneath the BQE, is exactly what was happening back then. Full-scale riots taking place now amongst the migrants who live in those empty warehouses. I mean, we're talking about, there is video out there of total, like it's Mortal Kombat in the streets, bats and sticks and pipes, and they've divided up according to their ethnic and racial background. You have North Africans battling Venezuelans and Ecuadorians, no cops. No Officer Krumke, nobody around. And you see these videos and you're saying, what the hell have you done to our city? 4,500 single able-bodied men of military age stuffed into one square block with nothing to do and nowhere to go other than all day long smoke weed and drink cerveza. And start scheming in terms of what they can do. We have patrols in the area, and what you'll see are cars driving up to these migrant shelters with plates from Florida, from Indiana, from Illinois, from Rhode Island, from Pennsylvania. Migrants with cars, with plates. And you say, how could this be? And they're getting out, they're parking underneath the BQE, and they're going in and they're staying in the shelter at our taxpayers' expense. And then they're rumbling out in the streets all night long till the break of dawn. They're having barbecues, they're having parties, they're blasting music, reggaeton, bachata. They roll up with cars that have the size of a Frigidaire ice box refrigerator. Mm-hmm. It's strapped on top of the car. The music booms so loud that the windows shake in the warehouses, and the cops do nothing. I look at the cops. Hey, not our business. City Hall's told them they're untouchables. Leave them alone. Well, they're on Myrtle Avenue. They're up and down Myrtle Avenue. They're in the Key Food. They're shoplifting. They're in all those little hipster millennial tchotchke shops, They're shoplifting.
Tchotchkes?
Yeah, they sell little tchotchkes, overpriced. But they steal that. Then they bring it back to the migrant center there, and they have like a flea market right outside with all the stolen goods. It's like Alibaba and the 40 Thieves. You look at all this stuff, you say, where'd they get this stuff? They stole it. And we're doing nothing about this. Finally, all the hipsters and millennials that live there, many of them liberal, progressive, democratic socialists of America, they're like, hey, this is way too much. Oh, my God, you're killing the quality of life. You got older black people who are homeowners who are planning, we getting out of here. You know who lives in that area? Attorney General of New York, Tish James. What does she do about it? Ugats. Brad Lander lives there. The controller who would like to be the next mayor over my dead body, he lives there. You'd be surprised all of our elected officials who live in bucolic little Clinton Hill, right near the Brooklyn Navy Yard, right by the BQE. This place is like controlled by the illegal aliens now. You've got them in groups. You got a group from Mauritania, where they still have slavery, by the way, in North Africa. You got a group from Mali. You got a group from Chad. You got a group from the Sudan. You got a group from Senegal. You got a group from, oh my God, Madagascar, all the way down. It's an island way down in the southern tip of Africa, the southeast tip. They're battling. And then you got the Venezuelans and the Ecuadorians who have teamed up, and they're battling all the North Africans. There's warfare in the streets. This elderly black woman who's been our contact, JJ, they threw a brick through her window because they called her a snitch. And you know, they've learned very quickly the culture of the streets in Brooklyn. Snitches get stitches and end up in ditches. Nobody's been arrested. 3 people have been shot and killed. Nobody's been arrested. This is going on round the clock. The mayor showed up and he had dinner with 10 selected community leaders.
Oh, yeah. And I love his analysis of how the dinner went. Like they're kind of upset. They're a little concerned, but the minute I told them how little I could do, they were like applauding me. How great you've done with how little you can do.
What is up with this?
I don't even know what that means.
What is up with this guy? He always walks into rooms and he claims everybody applauds him.
They're hanging up pictures of him on their walls and stuff.
Standing ovation. He walks into the tents, in Randall's Island. Floyd Bennett. Hey, they give him a
People are like naming their kids after him.
It's like, what is wrong with this guy?
No.
And that part of Brooklyn, it's destroyed. It's over.
Yeah, and the other question that doesn't seem to, for some reason, never get answered, and I'm not quite sure if they even know the answer to this. So, 200,000 plus people have come, but no, only 64,000 are still within the city's care. So all of these people who have like transitioned, over 100,000 have transitioned elsewhere, do they even know who they are or where they went or what they're doing?
They're still here.
But, I mean, do they know where they went off to?
No.
Do they know names? Do they have ID? Do they have anything?
No, they don't care. Nancy, they haven't left.
No,
they're all over the city. They're in the subways. They're sleeping now in the streets. They're in parks. They got tents.
Yeah, it's just kind of interesting how there's no actual little follow-up information about who these people are, where they landed in, how they figured out how to get out of the system.
Where are they going to go? They're not going to get it any better than here. They get SNAP cards, $400 a week. They get culturally appropriate food, 3 squares a day, a place to stay.
Laundry.
iPhones, smartphones, health insurance. I kid you not, as Nancy mentioned, their laundry is put into their private duffel bags, shipped to Rikers Island, where the inmates wash the illegal aliens' laundry. Folded. Use Bounty fabric softener on it to make sure it's nice and soft. Put it all back in the duffel bag and put a few little kisses, chocolate Hershey's on top. We love you, illegals. They don't do anything for themselves. Nothing. I said in that community, 4,500 single able-bodied young men with nothing to do, nowhere to go, of military age. Why don't you just give them a plastic bag and a a broom and a shovel and tell them this is your sector. You just got to keep it clean all day. That's your job. They'll do it if you told them from day one.
And it's funny because some of the jobs that some of the elected officials keep on positioning these migrants potentially in. Okay, so the lifeguard, Eric Adams saying that Hochul tried to push having them as home health care aides. Can you imagine that one? But apparently none of them can use a broom. I don't know how that works.
No, and he goes, I can't let them volunteer. The federal government won't let me do it.
But I want them to go into your home and take care of your parents.
Yeah.
That's okay with me.
And be lifeguards because they're excellent swimmers.
And be exactly.
Have you ever heard anything so crazy in your life? You can't be a volunteer. The federal government won't let them volunteer. Who ever stopped a volunteer?
No, but notice how he phrases that, right? He says they can't volunteer for a stipend, which last I checked isn't what volunteerism is in the first place.
No.
Yeah, so he's not saying they can't theoretically work for free or for services rendered, given the fact that they are getting room and board. So they can volunteer for free, but he keeps throwing that word stipend in there for a reason.
Look, ladies and gentlemen, Trump says he wants to deport 8 million back. That ain't happening. They're going to be here for quite some time. Our elected officials have invited them in as our guests, even though they're unwanted guests. We got to continue to pay for them. Remember, the mayor told us this year's budget, 2024, $5 billion. It's already gone beyond $5 billion. Next year, he estimates $10 billion. So if we actually had less illegal aliens, Nancy, if so many of them were leaving, we have no idea where they're going.
Yeah.
Why are we spending twice as much money if we have less illegal aliens?
That's a great question.
Well, you know what that means. You got to do a deep dive on it. So, as of a week ago, at the weekly press conference of Eric Adams and his endless staff of people, whenever he has a press conference, it's like the Last Supper. There's always 12 people there. 6 on one side, 6 on the other side. It's like
and he continues to have these goofy signs and PowerPoints constantly playing behind him as like some additional assistance.
Yep, crime is down, jobs are up. Yeah, sure. You keep It's like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Remember? I think was it Robert Redford who was telling what's his name, Paul Newman? No, I think it was Newman telling Robert Redford. You keep thinking that. Yeah, you keep thinking that. Unbelievable. We are destroyed. Ladies and gentlemen, we are destroyed. I know you're not going to be going down to Clinton Hill and Hall Street and Ryerson, and you're not going to be taking the exit off the BQE when you're driving to and from your jobs or your work. But I got to tell you, we're your eyes, we're your ears, and there are other journalists who are documenting this viral news. He's out there all the time. The local people are posting videos. They're dealing drugs. They're having sex out in the street. It's like a red light district and no cops. What the hell happened to the police? None. And when I stop the police and I say, What gives here? They've told us to leave them alone. They are untouchable. Again, I'm going to say this, and people, when I say it, can't believe this. Police officers are not permitted to go into the shelter. That means they can't even use the bathroom facilities that we're paying for as taxpayers. So basically, if they got to go, hey, go get yourself a cheeseburger and fries at a restaurant because you ain't coming into our bed. Can you believe this? They won't let cops in. Cops have to get a 911 call, and only then can they go in these shelters, which are chaotic. Weapons, they're fighting. There's rapes. There's domestic abuse. Today you were with me when we walked over to the Animal Care and Control Center, the new one in Ridgewood on Flushing Avenue. We got off on Jefferson Street, the L train, and I showed you the mother and children shelter for Americans. Mm-hmm. What was your impression?
Well, I mean, from the outside, you would have no idea that it was a shelter. It's well-maintained, nice-looking building.
Americans, they're not permitted to hang outside with the kids. They have a very strict curfew. They have educational classes inside. They have to control the kids or they're gone. That's right on Jefferson in Flushing. 4 blocks over as we walked east, when we hit the Migrant Center, could you describe to everybody what you saw there off Wyckoff and Flushing?
Yeah, it was a scene. Let's see. I would say anywhere from 7,500 just young guys sitting outside, probably double that in terms of like bikes, motorbikes, things like that. The fire hydrant was open and just running down the street, all the water. There was people, let's see, cutting hair, cooking food,
doing everything that you can't do
just
in
like
the city.
It was the weirdest little scene in the world. Like, because the shelter's like one city block, it was on every side of it. So every side had like that version going on, the front, the sides. A lot, and all men. It must be a men's shelter because I didn't see one woman.
Oh, but if you talk to the city, most of the migrants are women and children.
No, because usually, because you can always see, because the women and children ones, they have like the very obvious small little kids, the babies, the strollers. No, it was young men and bikes. That was
all
it.
men.
Yeah.
A recipe for trouble with no women.
Yeah, that's not good.
You have all these men with no women, with high levels of testosterone crashing through their cranium. going to be roaming through those neighborhoods. What the hell do you think is going to happen? And no security. The directors of the shelters were not outside, hurting them and say, hey, fellas, you can't be hanging out here. You can't be smoking weed, drinking cerveza, barbecuing, fixing cars, washing cars, right? Cutting hair. They're like they're running a business outside. Meantime, you go 4 blocks over, it's mothers and children in a shelter, all Americans, no problems. Because there are strict rules. Ladies and gentlemen, you need to know this is your tax dollars being wasted, and it's promoting potential criminal activity. They're dealing drugs openly. No cops anywhere to be found. I stop a cop. Hey, I know, Curtis, we're not permitted to go there. What? They tell us stay away from there unless there's a 911 call. You don't even go around the block. You don't even check out what they're doing. They got open hydrants there. God forbid there's a fire. No, they tell us to leave the illegals alone. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you need to know because you're not going to hear this anywhere else. I mean, where else are you going to hear this? Nancy was out there today in the heat. I was out there. James came along with us. We put it all on video. We're posting it on our Facebook, our Twitter, our Instagram. Check it out. It's there. It's documentary evidence. I wish we could put up some of the comments of the people who work for the city, but we don't want them to lose their jobs. But they're basically saying when it comes to the illegal aliens, the migrants, there are no rules. There are no regulations. There are no curfew. There is no searches. They have weapons. They have contraband inside. People are driving in from out of state. They park their cars right there, and we're talking Beamers, Benzes, Audis. Oh, my God. You've seen some of those cars, Nancy?
Yeah, it was interesting when they were removing some of the people from the encampment on Randall's Island last week. They show cars being repossessed, and then they're opening up the trunks, and I kid you not, they have like big screen TV boxes. Like, where are these people getting this money?
From us.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
From us. And it's Biden and Holcomb and Adams who have paved the way for them to do this. And then what does Eric Adams says? Nothing I can do. This is going to destroy us. This is like the captain of the ship who's basically saying, hey, we're going down with the ship. There's nothing we can do. So let's keep spending more money and giving them more free stuff. Remember when those Puerto Ricans stopped us and they were out in the streets and these blankety blanks get everything for free. We get nothing. Nothing. This is going to cause major problems. If any of you listening out there are running for office, this is the issue you run on. Because no matter who you go up to, the response is when they look around and make sure there's nobody monitoring what they say, to call them a racist or a xenophobe. Why the hell are these migrants getting everything for free? Everybody says the same thing. And the Democrats who are in charge, they can't give you a straight answer. They can't give you a straight answer. Up next, a search for happy continues and not good results at the Bronx Zoological Society. They call it, why don't you just call it what it is, a zoo? As they do everything to keep me out of there and threaten me with arrest. Then, naturally, we've got to discuss the cyclone. This may be it for the cyclone, the roller coaster. They're saying it broke one last time and they may not fix it. And then that horrible rape and assault that occurred in Coney Island under the boardwalk, the Nicaraguan illegal alien aided and abetted by the Mexican illegal. The New York Times did a huge 4-piece spread in today's Sunday New York Times. And they said, the city is doing everything to keep the homeless and the illegal aliens out from under the boardwalk. Guess what? We do a better job than the New York Times. We have all the pictures that show you each and every way they can continue to get in under the boardwalk and commit crime. Oh, my God. We cold-busted the old gray lady. You don't want to miss it right here at WABC, your place to be.
WABC. Talk Talk Radio 77 WABC. New York's talk station with the king of New York. Curtis Sliwa, 77 WABC. Now to the Bernard McGurk studios of 77 WABC and Curtis Sliwa.
You're my Coney Island baby. You mean so much to me. You're my pretty little lady. I love you tenderly. You're my lucky star. That's what you are. You're my Coney Island baby. You're so precious, so sweet. Since the day I met you, my life has been complete. You're my everything. Soon you'll wear my ring. You're my girl.
Classic. Coney Island packed with the hot, sweltering heat. Try to find any space on the beach that's closest to Coney Island, Stillwell Avenue, the exit for the major subway lines, and right by the Cyclone. One of the few wooden roller coasters still around. Nancy, it will soon be 100 years in existence. As you go up, it cranks along, and then when it reaches its highest apex, it starts hurtling down as fast as 60 miles per hour. And I got to tell you, people have incredible memories of being on the Cyclone, and at one point, when Coney Island was in its heyday, they had 3 roller coasters. 3 roller coasters. I think the Thunderdome, I forget the name of the other one. But the Cyclone was always the best. People would get married on the Cyclone. People would get divorced on the Cyclone. People would meet their girlfriends and boyfriends for the first time while standing on line for the Cyclone. Sometimes that roller coaster was so popular, the line would wrap around the block, and you would wait. And some people would want to ride it over and over again from beginning of the day at about 9 o'clock to when it closed, usually at about 8 o'clock. Well, the Cyclone had a problem the other day. They had to pluck all the people that were on the roller coaster off there because it got stranded going up. It sort of locked down. That can be a pretty scaring proposition if you got any kind of phobias. And they were plucked down, and then the engineers ran up there, and, not that many people left who know how to deal with a all-wooden roller coaster system. And they gave a prognosis that is not at all favorable. They almost put the Cyclone on life support, said it probably would not make it back in this season. Generally, the season ends at Labor Day. We might not see our beloved Cyclone ever again. Relegated to a museum, the Coney Island Freak Show there that Dick Ziggin, I call him the mayor of Coney Island for so many years, was the impresario of. But this would be a sad day, Nancy, if the Cyclone roller coaster were no more. What a great history. What an absolutely great history. But even Coney Island, it's having so many problems of late. The most recent one, we need to give you an update, because there are a lot of legal issues involved. People will always ask us, how can these illegals come in, commit crime after crime after crime, and not be deported, or not in any way, shape, or form suffer penalties for the crimes they committed? Why are they treated as untouchables by the Biden administration, by Hochul, by Eric Adams, by the district attorneys in that area, Eric Gonzalez from Kings County, Brooklyn? What is this double standard that exists where illegal aliens can commit some of the most vicious, violent crimes, and there doesn't seem to be any consequences at all for them? This case, I think, brings this all to the forefront. You remember it was, only like 2-3 weeks ago, Nicaraguan illegal alien who had committed multiple crimes. goes into right by the Cyclone Stadium itself where the Mets minor league franchise plays. And there's an area right under the boardwalk. You can gain entrance to it because the fence was ripped down in the city. The Parks Department will not repair it. But a Mexican illegal alien assists the Nicaraguan who rapes his homeless woman. The Mexican illegal alien beats up her boyfriend and prevent him from jumping in and stopping the rape. And apparently it's a really long route of the criminal justice system really failing the victims, failing us here in society, and turning this rapist loose again and again.
Yeah, this is actually really crazy because the first time that he was charged with the rape, and this was in the Sunset Park shelter.
The La Quinta Hotel that we were paying $180 a night to house him. And hey, welcome to America from Daniel Ortega land. Are you a Sandanista from Nicaragua? $180 a night.
Yeah, like the DA's office took a lot of time trying to defend this decision to, sort of not charge him ultimately after he had spent 15 months in Rikers, because they said, oh, the victim, didn't really want to testify at trial, so therefore the whole case fell apart. Well, first of all, that's not really true because there I'm sure was other evidence that you could have gone forward with. But even still, they said, okay, well, look, now our option is to just, give you a plea deal. The plea deal was second degree assault, which is a felony. So right away, that meant that he was susceptible to being given a detainer by ICE, so he could have been picked up and then deported. But instead, so what happens is they give him this like really sweet plea deal, and then the rest of the thing is that he has to. Oh my gosh, this is crazy. He has to attend weekly counseling for problematic sexual behavior for 9 months. Okay, this is his penalty.
Wait. Hold up. This is a guy from Nicaragua who can't even speak English. So they cut him loose from jail. This is a guy who's raped and assaulted a woman in the very hotel that was housing him, that we paid $180 a night to house him. Plus, we fed him. So they cut him. Now, this is Eric Gonzalez, the weak, feckless, ineffective district attorney in Brooklyn. And what's the deal he gives him instead of keeping him in jail?
Yeah, so he was ordered to attend weekly counseling for problematic sexual behavior. Nice way of putting that, too.
Hold on a second.
Like, not you're a rapist. No, problematic sexual. That's
no, let's not call him that.
Okay.
He's an unhoused individual. We don't call him a homeless individual. He's an unhoused. They create all this terminology. And I'll bet you the training wasn't even in Spanish. Right? It's all in English. He's just sitting there. He has no idea what the hell is going on.
Like a picture book or some sort.
This is crazy.
And then the prosecutor, when hearing that, had no objection. Oh, that's fine. And then actually says that we are releasing him on the strength of his promise to return. Because apparently his word is his bond.
Wait. Ladies and gentlemen, you need to hear. This is in the New York Times.
This actual transcript.
This is a very good report. I know you all hate the New York Times, but this is a very thorough report based on the facts. They're not editorializing here. They released him. Again, who released him? Eric Gonzalez, based on the fact that he wasn't a risk not to come back. He's a freaking illegal alien from Nicaragua who's raped and assaulted. Continue on, Nancy.
Yeah, so when this sentence was being handed out, so the prosecutor says that the district attorney had no objection to the sentencing because and then he was coming back the following month, I guess his little monthly checkups, and releasing him on the strength of his promise to return. But he did not.
So, Eric Gonzalez, you should have to conduct a press conference. Because I know you're a chicken. You're hiding out in the Lindsay houses, the co-ops right across from the 90th precinct. That's where you grew up. That's where you live now. And explain how you can release this rapist, this assaulter, because of his promise to return. And then he didn't return.
Yeah, and actually, so the day that they were supposed to be in court and he wasn't there, it gets even worse. because the judge had no objection from the prosecutors that said that he was going to issue a bench warrant, but he was going to wait on that because he wanted to give his lawyer some time to find him. So they didn't even do it right away. They waited on that.
So the judge...
Everyone's cool with it.
No problem. Hey, why don't you go see if you can find your client?
And that's what happens.
Hanging out underneath the boardwalk in Coney Island.
And then 2 days after he was supposed to appear and he didn't appear, that's when the woman got raped under the boardwalk.
Wow. Boy, what a great judge. Do we have the name of that judge? Because we got to name and shame these judges. Because, we beat up on the district attorneys, rightfully so. They're feckless. They're weak. But many times it's these judges who've been appointed previously by mayors. So could have been Adams. It could have been Comrade Bill de Blasio, the part-time mayor, the dope from Park Slope, who single-handedly destroyed the city that we love. Could have been Bloomberg. Probably not Giuliani. Most of them have pretty much hung up their Black Regal robes. They're retired. So he would either be a Bloomberg appointee, appointed by de Blasio. We know what kind of judges those are. All you would have to say is you were from Nicaragua. Release him, since Bill de Blasio and Charlene love the Sandinistas, love that pedophile leader, Daniel Ortega and his wife, and actually stayed with them in Managua in Nicaragua. Oh, yeah. Not only did they honeymoon in Havana in Cuba behind the sugarcane curtain of Fidel Castro and Raul Castro, they went down and spent 4 months in Managua in the house of Daniel Ortega and his wife, who are now leaders for life, dictators. And by the way, Daniel Ortega raped his own niece. Oh, what an outstanding individual, right? God. Do we have the name of this judge in Black Regal robes?
Yes, Judge Donald Leo.
Donald Leo, what a fine, outstanding jurist. You know something? I'm not going to issue a bench warrant. Counselor, why don't you go find him? He's probably underneath the boardwalk in Coney Island waiting to rape another homeless woman. And this just gets worse. It took the New York Times to expose all of this. Do we have any answers from Eric Gonzalez himself? He always blusters. He thought he would be the Attorney General of the state of New York, first Hispanic to achieve that if Tish James had actually run for the governorship, which he decided wisely to drop out because she was way behind in the polls to Kathy Hochul. But this guy is inept. He's as bad as Bragg. He's as bad as Darcel Clark in the Bronx.
Yeah, and it's every borough, because this happens from 2017, where the DA's office policy, and this is throughout all 5 boroughs, where they were trying to be more protecting of the immigrants, and so therefore they don't generally divulge information to federal officials. So that policy is maintained to this day by every office.
Isn't that wonderful that we have district attorneys who not only turn illegal aliens loose, but follow in the footsteps of Andrew Evil Eyes Cuomo, King Cuomo II, the son of Mario Faccia Bruta Cuomo, who called ICE thugs. Isn't this wonderful that we vilify ICE and we actually put up on a pedestal rapists and assaulters who happen to be migrants? Isn't this amazing? And by the way, we continue to house them, feed them, clothe them, give them smartphones, iPhones, culturally appropriate food, and of course, let's not finish without talking about all the health insurance we give them. And what do we give our own citizens who might be homeless or who are veterans who served in peacetime or wartime and are homeless now, staying at a shelter? We give them ugats. We give them bupkis. How the hell they justify this? I'm going to label them all self-hating Americans. They are self-hating Americans because they are telling American citizens to the back of the line. If you're an illegal alien, if you're a migrant, if you are someone coming from a country that may have released you from the bowels of their jail simply to get rid of you, or as a single able-bodied young man of military age with nothing to do and nowhere to go, the dictators in those countries fear these young men joining the rebels that will try to oust them. So they figure, send them to America. Ándale, ándale. And we got these politicians who treat the illegal aliens better than all of you who pay your taxes. And they tell you, mind your own freaking business. We know what's in your best interest. You don't have a need to know. We'll tell you what we think you're entitled to know. But the most important thing, pay your taxes. Even if you're dealing in kilos of cocaine, right? All we care about at the IRS is that you paid your tax on your ill-gotten gain. We won't rat you out. We won't report you to the police or the DEA as long as you pay your taxes. Isn't that great to be in America, where you could commit the worst crimes imaginable making money? Fentanyl. You're a fentanyl dealer, right? You're bringing it in. And you're making millions of dollars. Hey, we don't care if you're dealing fentanyl. You just got to pay your taxes. You see, because if you don't pay your taxes, then you're going to force us to have to come after you like we went after Al Capone, because he didn't pay his taxes. So the worst thing you can do in America is not deal drugs, not murder, not rape, not rob. It's not to pay your taxes, because then we're coming after you. Won't share that information with anyone. Hush, hush, mush, mush. Just pay your freaking taxes.
WABC. Check this out.
No one knows New York better. The founder of the Guardian Angels, Curtis Sliwa.
And you can't compete against that.
On 77 WABC. Now to the Bernard McGurk studios of 77 WABC and Curtis Sliwa.
Me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd.
Buy me some peanuts and cracker jack.
I don't care if I never get back. Oh, we'll root for the home team. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.
Oh, classic. And boy, we're going to focus on the Yankees. There is a story here that I can't believe, so I've turned it over to Nancy. Again, she is a fan of David Wells. If you remember, it was a week ago. She got drenched in the rain because she had to have a cup of coffee in that squall where 5 inches of rain fell within 1 hour, caused all kinds of chaos. Is a result of global warming, climate change. I know many of you, no chance. But anyway, point is, her beloved David Wells, New York Yankee cap, destroyed. Yesterday was Old Timers game at Yankee Stadium. And actually, a lot of the veterans came, including number 2, Jeter. But Jeter won't play in an Old Timers game because he's such a freaking diva. He said, no, I don't want to play because, I just won't be looking as good as I would when I was active and, dominating baseball as he did. So his friend, Jorge Posada, the former catcher, said the same thing. Well, I won't look good out there playing a game. I remember, Nancy, watching on TV Old Timers game on Saturdays. And, you had, at that time, the announcer, Bill Mazur. No, not Bill Mazur. I'll get it correctly. But you had Phil Rizzuto. You had Bill White. Again, I'm getting the wrong name there. And they would introduce the old Yankees, and they would come out of the dugout. Joe DiMaggio was still alive. He'd get the greatest applause. So would Mickey Mantle, and then everybody else. And then after the introductions of all the old-timers who showed up that went back through the eras, then they would play a game. And they looked pretty dopey at times. Like Elston Howard falling down trying to catch a fly ball in left field. Hey, look, they're old. But people looked forward to watching them play. But oh no, the diva. Because Jeter won't play. Nobody gets to play anymore. They don't do the old-timers game anymore. Now, I understand lockdown, pandemic, COVID. I get it. They didn't do it. But because Jeter won't do it, he goes, I don't want others playing because I don't want them making it look like I'm a gold brick, a deadbeat, a slacker, and I don't want to go out onto the field and actually throw a few baseballs around, take a few times up at bat and entertain the fans. God forbid you do that, Derek. Number 2, you diva. I always hated his guts. Everybody loved Derek Jeter. Did you love Derek Jeter?
Not particularly.
Yeah, well, you were a David Wells fan. Jorge Posada, good, but he wouldn't block the plate, and would never get dirty. So naturally, everyone's raving about Aaron Judge, and rightfully so. He got, 49 dingers. He's on his way to tie his record of 62. I don't think he's roided up. I don't think he's like A-roid. Who was there? God, I hate that guy. But in addition to all of this, they claim that a genuine Babe Ruth, I can't believe I'm saying this, that when Babe Ruth pointed to the stands, I think it was in Wrigley Field, the Yankees were playing a World Series, and promised for a kid who was in the hospital that he would hit a home run, that garb that he wore on that day, I don't know how they know it's that garb. What did it sell for, Nancy?
$24.1 million.
So $24 million. Basically for the shirt.
A shirt.
That Babe Ruth, number 3, wore when, the story goes, he was visiting a kid in the hospital who was very ill, and he said, kid, what would you like? Hey, babe, I want you to hit a home run. And then he said, you know what? He actually predicted the inning or about the inning. When I'm up, I'm going to point to the stands, and I'm going to hit one for you, kid. They actually showed in the Babe Ruth movie. It's great. And, Babe is there, and he's eating hot dogs in between at bats while he's in the dugout. He's flirting with every female in the stand. I mean, this guy broke every rule in baseball, but he was the greatest of all time. And then that poignant moment comes up where he's kicking, he's kicking the dirt out of his spikes, and the catcher's giving him grief, saying, hey, you look like you had too many hot dogs, babe. Hey, mind your business. And then he steps out of the batter's box, and with that giant 42-ounce Louisville slugger he swung the biggest bat at that time in baseball. He points to, I think, right center field in Wrigley, which is not a huge launch, because Wrigley Field is small. Ivy League walls with the ivy that grows on the walls there. And then he hits a home run. And everybody says, oh, my God, he hit it for the kid. He hit it for the kid. And you see the kid is in bed in the movie, and the kid is jumping around for joy. The kid is like probably going to die any minute, from leukemia or something. It's like it makes you want to cry. Sid Rosenberg in the morning, he cries over everything, but that would have made him cry. Now, how did they authenticate that this is the jersey, the number 3 baseball jersey that Babe Ruth wore when he hit the shot that he called and pointed to the right center field stands in Wrigley Field and basically told the pitcher he was going to hit a home run off of him?
Yeah, it's a curious chain of custody for this. So, okay, so according to the Heritage Foundation auctions, which is actually what just sold it, Ruth gave the jersey to a friend that he played golf with in Florida around 1940. Then the man's daughter sold it to a collector in the early 1990s, and then it sold at auction for 2005. But then at that time, it was only linked to the fact that he wore it in the 32 World Series. But then they said the last few years, here's where it gets interesting, they photo matched it to Game 3.
Come on.
Yeah, I know, that's pretty interesting, right? So there was no chain of custody that's what it was until then. But then someone looked at a picture and said, looks the same.
Yeah, sure. The person who probably made the $24 million at the auction. This
Probably.
Reminds me of Slammin' Sammy Sosa, all roided up. This is when he was black and he hadn't yet bleached himself white yet. By the way, Slammin' Sammy Sosa is the whitest guy you'd ever want to see now. whiter than Michael Jackson in his prime, bleaching himself. I think he hit 66 home runs one year, and he went around to all different cities and said he was giving the bat that he hit the 66th home run with to the mayor of that city, and they should actually put it in on the wall at City Hall. He schnookered Rudy. Rudy did it. He went to cities in Japan, throughout Japan. He did it there. He schnookered them. He schnookered people all over America. Finally, people began to say, how could you have had like 12 bats that hit the 66th home run? And so he must have been getting paid to make those appearances because he kept manufacturing those bats. By the way, also, I remember going to Steiner Sports up in Westchester in Yonkers. They had their warehouse there. And the guy Steiner was telling me, you see, we're selling dirt from the old Yankee Stadium. I said, how do I know that's dirt from the old Yankee Stadium? How do I know you didn't just go into the backyard here in Yonkers and put dirt in plastic bags? He goes, it's been authenticated. I said, how do you authenticate dirt? He said, this is the dirt around first base. That got a premium price. This is the dirt around home plate. Oh, that got the most money. This is the dirt around third base. This is the dirt out at the monuments. You know, in the old Yankee Stadium, you know, it's 461 feet out to center field, and they had the monuments on the field. He goes, oh, that, you know, you got to pay a premium price for it. I said, Steiner, I don't believe any of this crap. I think you went into the backyard and you basically dug a hole and you put dirt in a bag and then, no, this is all officially authenticated. $24 million for a Babe Ruth jersey that they claim is the one that he hit that historic home run with when he pointed to the stands for the kid in the hospital because he wanted to fulfill the promise to hit a home run for.
Yeah, no, I'm not really sure how you authenticate that part, but
somebody took a picture. They looked at it.
And it wasn't like it was, I mean, the quality of the photos back then, I mean, you can make them a little better now, but I mean, that can't be close enough to even match it.
Of course not. But have you ever been into anybody's baseball when they have paraphernalia and they swear that everything's been authenticated? You don't want to bust their bubble. You don't want to break their heart. You don't want to let them know that, man, that looks like a knockoff to me. No. You just bite your tongue. Anyway, up next, it's the Animal Welfare Hour. By the way, you can join me and Nancy for the Tunnel to Tower Walk and Run, September 29th. I was at the first one many years ago. There were only 1,500, but join us September 29th. All you have to do is click on my picture with Nancy to donate. Every dollar helps. Join our team. Last year, it was Dominic Carter's team that won overwhelmingly over every other team. Now, I can't afford to have my student in the Curtis Sliwa boot camp of talk radio show hosts do better than the professor, me, and Nancy here, who will be bringing up next to you the plight 6 weeks later. And we still can't find Happy in the Bronx Zoo, and I'm ready to get arrested for that, too.